I would consider that delegation. Whereas the motion sounds like there needs to be more than one person present. It has to be representing the position of more than one person.
That was the intent.
Yeah.
I think there is a difficulty with that, perhaps tying it to an organization of some type, because that kind of differentiates it from an individual somehow, and maybe we could look to our staff for clarification on that wording given what we've experienced. And having had this discussion that generated this report. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The section 52A does indicate that a person or organization who wishes to address council may do so as a delegation. The intent of this is to allow basically that a person, an individual of their own interest, the issue that is of interest to them as an individual may address council. An individual on behalf of an organization may also address council on the interest of the items that they are representing on behalf of the organization. And that would be the scope of a delegation. From time to time, the delegation may request or represent their own specific issue. There may be an ask or a request. There may not be. It may be simply an informational piece such as that we have heard with the Office of the Ombudsperson. It was about information. Whereas others that do come forward with the intent of delegation is for individuals, be it on their own accord or representative of the organization to which they are representing. They can present an ask, a request of some nature.
Thank you, Councillor Plant. Does that give you any guidance?
Well, for me, the intent would be to redefine it in the bylaw. That's why my motion was to redefine delegation as being more. I think the comment about the ombudsperson is a wonderful one. Obviously, they came as an individual, but they represented a group. I'm going to steal Councillor Ames' thunder just a touch because I've got the floor, which is, I think if an individual comes, they're going to the open forum. That's where they belong. They don't belong as a delegation in my estimation.
I think that's a really good point. We're looking, I think our original intent with this was to provide a level of education for us, and we've provided actually 2 means for this, and I think that's worth debating. Councillor Bryce.
Okay. And I think we're on it here. I think we're saying that there are opportunities for individuals to come and speak to council, and that's an open forum. There's an opportunity for organizations or collectives of some kind to bring forward a broader voice on a community issue, and that is a delegation. I don't know how you put those down into just a couple of words, but if we could agree that we all share the same notion of that definition, then I think we could even have it wordsmithed somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm expecting that we're going to need to codify it somehow, because an organization of neighbors, they could call themselves Friends of the Neighborhood, may want to come as a delegation as well. So we're not quite entering a trap yet, but we need to think this through if we're going to get this right the first time. Councillor Haynes, and then Councillor Durham, and then...
So I'll just continue that thought journey. In what was our intent when we look back to the start of this term was to give more opportunity for public engagement and to try to give some structures to different types of public engagement. Today we already experience public input on agenda items, and that can be an individual, it can be a community association, it could be BC Hydro. Separate to that, from agenda items, we then said, how do we give the public an opportunity to speak to us? And we had 2 formats. One was the public forum, where an individual or an association or BC Hydro can come and speak to us once a month for 5 minutes on any topic. And the beauty of that is that you do not have to put a formal application in. With the delegation, the idea was there would be more, I used the word gravis or content. They had to apply, tell us what they were speaking about. We also have the condition that if it's about a land use issue or it's in a matter that's already been addressed by council, it wouldn't qualify for a delegation, which is not the same for the open forum. They can talk about anything they like. So the delegation does have a more unique role. And in terms of quantifying it, it could be, if we go back, it could be 4 or 5 residents saying, we want a delegation, we want to talk about this. It doesn't have to be a formal structure. It can be, transitory. We're very concerned about the boats in Cutnova Bay. And we're coming as a delegation to talk about the Dover Bay. But there is more structure there. And I would say it should be 3 or more people concerned about a topic, or 3 or more people talking about a topic that may come from an institution or a more formal organization. I'm just playing around the words here. I haven't got it exactly, but I think I'm guiding us along that path. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to promote the discussion a little bit more, there are, as I see it, there are 4 ways of getting to speak. The first means is to speak to an item that's on the agenda, and that's been there for a long time. The second means is to come as a delegation, which was introduced with our council bylaw in April. The third means is to come to the open forum. That was also introduced in April. And the fourth means is an existing means, which is to come to an advisory committee. And what I might throw out there is that perhaps advisory committees are a better place for delegations to go with a looser wording, so that there's still a place for them to go and to introduce the information and then rely on the expertise of the committee and the understanding of the committee to then recommend something up to council, rather than simply have it there. I'm not prescribing that, I'm just saying there are 4 mechanisms here. Treating council and committee of the whole is the same because they have agenda items there. But we do have advisory committees, and I think we've got too many places where people can go and speak, and we need to. I'm actually suggesting that we structure it a bit better. Councillor Dermott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with the general nature of what has been said about trying to define and refine the process of delegation. I'm not sure I would put it just to advisory committees, because sometimes there is an advantage in that we had hoped, I think, to use delegation as a means of helping to educate and inform council. I brought back in prior councils a suggestion that we allow for delegations because we were not doing so. I think Councillor Brown brought a similar motion before I did, several years before. And that was because we would hear that perhaps Esquimalt Council had delegations from the group that were dealing with invasive species and served to be informed and educated through that, or they had a delegation from somebody else who was looking at a particular issue, such as switching to solar energy or whatever it might be. These kinds of information things were taking place in other councils, and they were not taking place here, and I think we were the poorer for it. However, there was never an intent, in my mind at least, that delegations would be an opportunity for somebody to walk in off the street and start to give their point of view of the world and why it was flat and why it wasn't round or whatever it happened to be. So I don't know that you can codify that. I would not try to do so tonight. I would ask staff to investigate what kind of wording, and there can never be precise wording that will establish what is a worthwhile delegation in the view of council and what is not. I think all the council can do is come to a general consideration of what they are wanting to see out of delegations, and then have to leave it perhaps to staff to say, this is consistent with what council is trying to do, or this is not. Or maybe you can codify it, but it's not going to be easy. Certainly, most certainly, I think our delegations have started to slip in the direction that is, as the mayor says, is more appropriate to the open forum or something of that nature. Thank you.
Councillor Morgan, please.
Thank you very much. Coming back to delegations, I would rather restrict it more against individuals coming. There might be a case where an individual does represent some worthwhile organization, but I would rather have that individual say, bring another 1 or 2 people in so you are a delegation as such. And if something does slip through the cracks, someone does slip through, there are other opportunities for them to address council. And we're not going to get a perfect answer for this. And I guess I go back, the other night, and I was surprised when an individual got up and he was very sincere, and he meant well, and he talked about hydro and Site Dam and the rest, and he had a passion for it. But I just thought in my mind, he represented his view, and there was a different place where he could speak to us on that.
Well said. I think that's an important distinction of what views are being represented. We're trying to create this as open as possible. I'm still thinking personally myself that we have this wording that's in a bylaw right now that treats a delegation as a person or an organization. And so that's what we have there right now. And we could simply just split it, and we could have the organizations come to council, and we could have the person or organization come to advisory committee. Certainly we have provided opportunities for people to come and speak. Young Jillian McHugh came here and spoke, and then she went to advisory committees. I think she's sort of typical of that passionate individual that doesn't have the organization quite behind her, that needs to be heard, and that we need to get it through our system here. So that could be one way of doing it, but it's really up to council to decide. We have a motion on the table that's trying to deal with the plurality of this. We're having difficulty with the number, and we're finding conflict in that. I'm not sure this vote is going to go through at this stage. I think it really needs to be defeated and redefined or modified. Councilor Bryce.
We look at the word delegation and say to ourselves, okay, the root there is delegate. That in my mind is an organization or a body or a group have delegated somebody to come on their behest and bring a message forward. So it's not so much the number of bodies as it is perhaps who they represent. And so how we capture that, I don't know, but if we all share that same feeling, there surely must be some wording. And with the number of municipalities in this province, we're not the only ones entertaining delegations, so presumably somewhere somebody's defined it.
Right. Shall we vote on this motion? Madam Clerk, could you please call the motion back for us?
The part A of this motion is that council requests staff to look at amendment to the council procedure bylaw to establish, to better define and refine the definition of delegation.
Good.
I think that's fairly open, and we'll come back. Okay? Yeah, somehow we did it without knowing we did it.
By osmosis.
By osmosis, yes. Okay, I'll call the question on this 2A then. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That carries unanimously. All right, Councillor Plant, back to the second one.
Thank you. Just to remind us, this is open forum to begin at 7 o'clock, so I would look and also be included that the clarification be entering into debate with delegations, not with each other, the clarification.
Will someone second that?
Maybe they should be separate.
Some clarification.
No delegation is open for.
When you read it earlier, you also said that there would be no delegations on the amendment, so that would be included.
Yes, I'm sorry, I thought I said that, but maybe I jumped to my second part about the debate, so that would be none. Maybe that should be separate. Maybe let's make it 6, if I may, Mr. Mayor. So I will move that open forum begin at 7 p.m. and on the third Monday of the month, or as determined, with no delegations to occur on that evening.
I will second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, let's go to staff first because I'm blind.
Thank you. I just want to clarify council's intent that whether this is still outside of the formal structure of the council meeting. So we'd be looking for amendments to the time, which is all doable. I'm just needing to clarify that we're looking for that. It'd be a non-structured portion of meeting. Right.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I think that was the intent of the open forum that we should maintain. Councillor Plant.
Thank you. I'd like to add an amendment that the intention would be, if there were only 2 speakers at that open forum, that council would proceed immediately afterwards, and we would not wait until 7:30 if we started at 7 o'clock, such that we would then advertise.
went around this route a year ago.
Okay.
So there are some limitations around advertising and around starting council meetings sooner than they're advertised. We're actually not allowed to do that by law, as I understand it. Councillor Platt?
So is there a way through you to staff to have the open forum then become a part of the council meeting so that we could announce the council meeting starts at 7 to be followed immediately after open forum with the rest of the agenda? There has to be a way that we're not going to sit here from 7:05 until 7:30.
That's a good point.
Yes, I understand, Mr. Mayor, we have a concern about that because we don't think it's, from a staff perspective, it should be part of a meeting. But we've certainly, from current practice, identified that enough to keep us going for the half an hour. We haven't been short of material. So that may be something council wishes to look at and determine if that they should shorten or lengthen the time. But staff aren't going to recommend that it be part of the council meeting, given the current structure and what we believe is the intent of council for that.
Thank you. Before I go to Councillor Haynes, it's interesting to actually go. Where's it go? There was a recommendation. Actually, there's some commentary in the report making the recommendation was to start this from 6:15 to 6:45 for 30 minutes. It could be done at 6:30, but it would, simplify things, allowing council to start at 7 on a regular basis, and for the keeners, they would have to get here at 6:30. Councillor Haynes.
Given some of the things we've talked about, can I just get a clarification first? From staff, then when we start a council meeting, it is required that all the staff are here. We can't start the council meeting with you out on those days. Okay, council meeting means everything it means here. Okay, so with that in mind then, although we've heard some discussion from the floor about the beauty of starting at 7, maybe on those days we could start the open forum at 6:30 and then stay at 7. Is there an appetite for that?
Councillor Murdoch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate this suggestion from Councillor Haynes, but I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Plant in the comments we heard earlier that for most people, 7 is probably about as early as they can get here. They got kids to feed and they're coming from work. Maybe they got to run people around and drop them off at soccer or band practice or whatever it is. So I'd suggest that we stick with 7, and if it means that we weren't excited enough to draw a crowd to the open forum, I'm sure we could keep ourselves entertained for the balance of the time.
Councillor Dermott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would also favor the starting at 7. The combination of the facts that Councillor Murdoch has just said, and then the fact also that it's consistent with the time that we normally start things. We would simply have to advertise that on those evenings, council meeting would start at 7:30, which is doable and would be in the paper and people would know that and would soon come to understand that. I think we would actually get more people coming out for the open forum if they didn't have to wait till somewhere between 9 and 11 o'clock at night to speak, not knowing if it was going to be then or it was going to be at 8 or 8:30 or whenever. That would give the public certainty, and I think that would cause more of them to come out and express their opinion to us. So I'm supportive of the original motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Berglund.
Thank you very much. Going back to the public forum, the concern I have is we have it for a half hour, but sometimes I believe as councillors get too much involved in debating it and talking about it. I think it's one thing to ask a question of the individual, but to start debating it back and forth, I think we ought to leave that for another night, like committee of the whole, where the public can get engaged into. Thank you.
We are committee of the whole. We've heard from the public, but I see your point. Back to Councillor Plant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess what I would ask is perhaps the best way to proceed is to move to the 7 o'clock and ask for staff to investigate ways in which we can start our meetings as soon as possible within the parameters of the charter. I look, for example, to those of us who serve at the CRD. We often will see that the hospital board meeting starts at 1:30, and it's in the minutes that the Capital Regional District Board meeting will start at 1:31. Well, we all know it's not going to start at 1:31, but the understanding is that when that is finished, that will begin. And I can't help but think we could find a creative way. I'm with Councillor Murdoch. We'll always have things to talk about, but I just can't see if on that 1 or 2 months of the year, and we have had a couple of them where there's been nobody who comes to talk other than 2 people, where we sit here for 25 minutes and going, well, folks, we'll start in 20 minutes. It just seems illogical. So I would say an amendment to ask to the 7 o'clock start and no delegation, and an amendment and ask staff to report on ways in which we could begin the council meeting when the open forum is completed. Should it be prior to 7:30? So if there's a seconder to that, then
We would just wrap that in, Councillor, and with the mayor, we would wrap that in.
It's already done, thank you.
Yes.
Councillor Haynes.
What would you do then if someone arrived at 7:15 expecting an open forum in council?
should show up at 7.
Another one, next one.
All right, but before I go to Councillor Bryce, let's just have the clerk read back the motion so that we can have a better understanding of where we are. This is complicated.
Yes, the motion currently is that council direct staff to look at amendment to the council procedure bylaw to amend the time for open forum to 7 p.m. and that on those evenings there would be no delegation scheduled.
Councillor Bryce, please, can you give us some
I-
direction?
I support the motion. I think we're investing 1/2 hour a month into ensuring we have this dedicated time. I am not worried at all about my having to wait 10 or 15 minutes for another meeting to start. Glad to make that available. What I do like is the rigor that it gives for this ending at 7:30, because I think at times we've had drift and we have had our public forum sort of drift into the 45-minute period. At least if we start at 7, end at 7:30, everybody knows what the ground rules are. And there's going to be very few times where anybody who wants to speak to this council about something in that month can't find themselves here to do it. I think it makes sense.
Any more discussion? Well, this sounds good to me. We used to have meetings at 7:30 until we revised the bylaw to actually move them up a bit earlier, so I can support that as well. So with that, I'll call the question on this motion. Actually, has it been amended, or we have a motion on the floor? There's still a motion, correct. All right, all in favor? Opposed? None opposed, that carries unanimously. All right, over to Councillor Platt for the next one.
I'll slide this one in here because it seems like the logical place. I would just make number 3, that for clarification, that it be added in section 52, that council must not enter into debate with the delegation.
Second.
I think it just provides the clarity that some of us thought we shouldn't be doing any debating at all, but we have heard in the report, and I think most of us interpreted it before as we were allowed. So I think this just, it does add questions of the delegation. Debate with the delegation maybe makes an ugly sentence, but the spirit of it is that.
Thank you. Councillor Berglund.
To the mover, why would council get into any debate amongst themselves at all?
If the motion had been put forward. There can be motions put forward after delegations, such as referral, committee of the whole, or even action.
Okay? I'm going to speak against it.
Okay. Any more debate? I'll call the question on this motion then. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Berglund and Councillor Sanders are opposed, and that is carried. Great. Over to the next one. To Councillor Platt.
Thank you. This is the suggestion that when the public is able to weigh in on opportunities to comment on the agenda, but that be reduced to 4 minutes.
Second.
just to align ourselves with CRD, and also the fact that the majority of people do not take 5 minutes. And I also heard from several people they'd like meetings to be a little bit quicker. So if we can do that 1 minute at a time, so be it.
Any discussion? Councillor Murdoch?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I won't be supporting it. I think keeping 5 is consistent with what we do for committee of the whole, and if it's 4 minutes here and 5 minutes there, I think we're just going to be confusing people. Personally, I don't think making it aligned with CRD makes it any clearer to people what the process would be. You know, most people don't take the 5 minutes, so I'm not too concerned about it shaving off 2 or 3 minutes of our meeting time. I think that's maybe the discussion we have over here that's taking up more of the time. This might be a good example.
Councillor German?
Thank you. I'm of the same position as Councillor Murdoch. The CRD reduced its time because they were open-ended on delegations, and they found out that, you know, sometimes a meeting that started at 1:30 started on the agenda at 4 o'clock. That was problematic. We don't have that situation. We have a defined time for the delegations. It's or for the open forum rather. It's a half an hour. Hopefully everybody gets a chance, but if they don't, well, it's a half an hour. And it is the one time in a month that somebody comes and gets a chance to speak to council, so I'm happy to give them 5 minutes. And I agree with others. In most cases, the individual is not taking 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sanders, then Brown.
Thank you. I won't be supporting the motion either, as I think 5 minutes is what we consistently have done, and there are members of our public that have lobbied hard and long to make sure that we stay with that, and I think that 5 minutes is quite suitable.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So in the procedural bylaw right now, open forum, people are allowed to speak to us for 3 minutes, right now. So now you're going to bump it up to 5?
Could we get clarification of the motion? I think it
Yeah.
was to actually change it overall.
This is for the agenda items.
Oh,
that
not for the open. Councillor Dermott said open forum.
My fault.
agenda.
All right, thank you for that clarification. Next speaker, I'll look to Councillor Haynes, and then Councillor Worthington.
Although I second it for the point of discussion so we can get through this, I'm going to speak against it because I believe on the agenda items that 5 minutes may be what some of the people need, and it does embrace a wide range of people, including associations and others.
And Councillor Worthington.
Thank you. I agree with what has been said, and it's interesting coming back to Councillor Murdoch. He made a comment jokingly, but how often do we hear ourselves say, I agree with what has been said, but I'm going to say it over again anyway, you know, and we could save a lot of time by speaking less ourselves.
Sure, we haven't passed the motion yet.
Well, I'm going to speed up this meeting. I am rescinding the motion.
So it's been pulled off the floor? Okay, all right. I wasn't going to support it either because of the nature of the 4 minutes. I know, but just to give you some background, the nature of the 4 minutes of the CRD. The CRD speaking time was originally 5 minutes, and so many people were coming to speak that it was reduced to 3 minutes if there were 7 or more people speaking to the same agenda item. So it was trying to actually compress the speaking time down so that the committees could get to the business of the CRD. And then it was changed to 4 minutes because it was unpredictable for people coming up. They didn't know if they had 3 or 5 until they registered, and they had to ask the clerk how many there are, and it created a level of uncertainty. So it was moved to 4 to create that certainty. 5 is the standard at municipal councils, and I feel that we, just going forward, that we need to be equal with our peer councils, if you want to call it that. So, all right, so that's gone. And now I think we have one more left. Councillor Plank.
Thank you. This is just a housekeeping, I hope. This is to remove in the council procedure bylaw comments, regarding councillors only being allowed to speak once. We are constantly doing that. Oh, sorry, that's the motion.
Second.
That is not our practice, even tonight. So I would just say let's align what we're doing with what we're saying, unless people want to do it the other way, which then I would not speak in favor of.
Okay. There's a little, I'll just say something quickly. There's a little of sloppiness that goes on on my part, because we've come into a council with 6 members from the previous council, members before that. So there's kind of a way to get things done here. True. If you go down to the letter of the law, before someone can second something or speak, they need to be recognized to speak. And quite often it moves things along. Someone seconds it and it goes on. So there's a bit of flexibility there. And I would just look to feedback from council if they wanted me to make it more strict. But back to this motion that's been seconded. It's one of many items that we could look at. Councillor Durham. Sorry, Councillor Working first, and then Durham.
It becomes tricky in some ways. I could say, that's the way it's been done for the last 20, 30 years. Once it's moved, you speak to it once. But the plus side of doing it that way, you get home earlier at night, a lot earlier. And sometimes the talking that goes back and forth, I'm not sure it adds that much to the conversation, or discussion. And I like to stay with the old way, if I can use that term. And once the motion's made, and maybe you have to think twice about moving it right off the bat and hear what everyone has to say, and then make a motion. But once the motion's made, speaking to it once.
Thank you. Councillor Durham, and then Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm no big fan of riding my bike home at 5 to 1 in the morning, but nevertheless, I'm going to speak in favor of Councillor Plant's motion. For a long time when I was in council, I really felt there should be more opportunity for realistic debate on an issue for council, and we didn't have that before. If you spoke first or before somebody else, you put somebody forward, and then somebody else might put something refuting it, and their point of view might have been entirely legitimate, or there might have been things that you had concern with. I've found on this council that the opportunity to have some of that debate is really helpful in shaping ideas and shaping policies. Sometimes